instrument of transparency, accountability, and institutional dialogue between the Security Council and the wider UN membership. In its capacity as President of the Security Council for July 2025, Pakistan was entrusted with coordinating and preparing the introduction to this report. Our objective was not to have a perfunctory document, but a substantive and analytical account that faithfully reflects the Council's work, deliberations, and challenges and outcomes during the reporting period. We also sought to provide greater clarity and context regarding the evolving situations confronting the international peace and security in which the Council works. The report before you is comprehensive. It highlights that during 2025, the Security Council remained actively and meaningfully engaged in addressing a wide range of pressing issues related to the maintenance of international peace and security. The Council dealt with complex and interrelated crises across different regions of the world, and its agenda also reflected the gravity and scale of contemporary threats to international peace and security, including ongoing and new conflicts, emerging threats, humanitarian crises, and the range of responses from protection of civilians to peacekeeping, peace building, conflict prevention, and peaceful settlement of disputes, and cooperation with regional and sub-regional organizations. Despite persistent conflicts, growing humanitarian emergencies, and heightened geopolitical tensions, which at times complicated efforts to advance political settlements and collective action, the Council continued to play a central role in promoting stability, supporting peace processes, and reinforcing multilateral cooperation in pursuit of durable peace and security. As for the process of preparing this report, Pakistan endeavored to follow an open, constructive, and inclusive approach. In this regard, in line with Presidential Note 507 and General Assembly Resolution 79/327, and in coordination with the President of the General Assembly, an informal meeting of the wider membership was convened on 16th January 2026. The exchange of views was candid, constructive, and forward-looking. The perspectives shared by member states proved valuable in enhancing and strengthening the quality of the report. And we also followed closely the views expressed by non-council members at the wrap-in and wrap-up sessions that take place every month. We are pleased that negotiations on the introductory section were concluded in a spirit of cooperation and mutual accommodation, enabling agreement on the text at an early stage in February. This achievement was made possible by constructive engagement and hard work of all Council members, including our outgoing colleagues in Algeria, Guyana, Sierra Leone, Slovenia, and the Republic of Korea. Therefore, we deeply appreciate all of you for your substantive cooperation, support, and contribution. This also demonstrates that despite divergence on specific issues, the Security Council can work collectively and responsibly in discharging its responsibilities under the Charter. And we are also grateful to the Secretariat, particularly the Security Council Affairs Division, for their professionalism, dedicated support, and editorial advice throughout this process. President, whereas best effort has gone into this report to make it as comprehensive, objective, and analytical as possible, we believe the Council members and the wider membership would appreciate that there is always a room for more. This is an ongoing and collective effort. We look forward to hearing the views of the wider membership on this report and on ways to further strengthen the relationship between the Security Council and the General Assembly in line with the UN Charter and the principles of transparency, accountability, and multilateral cooperation. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement. I thank the delegation of Pakistan and other delegations and Ambassador, Your Excellency yourself, for the contributions made in this regard. I would like to thank the SCAT for the contributions they made. My understanding is that the Council is ready to proceed to the adoption of the draft annual report. May I take it that the draft report is adopted by the Council? There being no objection, it is so decided. This decision will be reflected in a note by the President of the Council of the Security Council to be issued as document S/2026/426. The meeting is adjourned. The 10,157th meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is the situation in Libya. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representative of Libya to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite Ms. Najam Shamim Khan, Deputy Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I now give the floor to Deputy Prosecutor Najam Shamim Khan.
Mr. President, thank you for the opportunity to brief the Security Council today. Please allow me to also express my thanks to His Excellency, the Permanent Representative of Libya to the United Nations, for his attendance. I regret that I am again unable to join you in the Council due to the non-issuance of a United States visa required for my travel to deliver my briefing in accordance with Security Council Resolution 1970. Mr. President, Excellencies, this week represented a true landmark in the fulfillment of the mandate set by this Council in relation to the situation in Libya. It was my honor this Tuesday to address the pretrial chamber together with the OTP Libya Unified Team, opening the confirmation hearing in relation to Mr. Khalid Mohammed Ali El-Hishri. In the first judicial proceedings stemming from this referral, Mr. El-Hishri is accused of 17 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity carried out principally in Mitiga prison, including in the women's section of the prison, over which Mr. El-Hishri had direct control. Here in the ICC courtroom, in the presence of victims, before civil society advocates, together with representatives of the government of Libya, and so many committed to justice, we were able together to substantially undermine the impunity that has protected the perpetrators of crimes for too long. Over 3 days, Mr. El-Hishri faced the accounts, the voices of many Libyans directly affected by his alleged crimes. The voices of women, men, and children who, in their own words, dared not believe that this day would come. Voices that told of the most deep suffering, of being shot and whipped, of being suspended from the ceiling, dragged by their hair, raped and beaten until they bled. Of children witnessing the violence being inflicted on their mothers, and of those children in turn being beaten, tortured, shot, and raped. Black African migrants enslaved, held in dehumanizing conditions and subjected to extreme physical, psychological, sexual, and reproductive violence, including torture. The actions of Mr. Khalid El-Hishri and the Rada militia are not the actions of a legitimate law enforcement agency, and Mitiga was not a normal prison. It was a system designed to inflict extreme pain, deep humiliation, and ultimately to destroy the lives of those detained. As the court heard this week, Mr. Khalid El-Hishri was at the center of this abuse. Mr. President, Excellencies, we know from those women who have given their voice to this case, and from so many Libyans in The Hague with us this week, that simply to hear these accounts being put to Mr. El-Hishri in a court of law has brought some measure of justice, of healing, a feeling that finally the equal value of their lives is recognized. But this is just the beginning of the process of justice. Following submissions by the victims' legal representatives and the defense, the confirmation hearing has now concluded. In the event that charges are confirmed, our office stands ready to commence trial promptly. We remain focused on ensuring that this process ultimately leads to the full recognition of victims' experiences through the conviction of Mr. El-Hishri. Mr. President, Excellencies, as we reflect on this significant, if only the first step, towards justice for many Libyans, it is important to underline how this hidden story of Mitiga was finally brought into the open. This would not have happened without the courage of the victims who called for truth and justice for what happened behind those dark walls. Our collaboration with civil society has also been central to this case and continues to be a core pillar of all our activities. I wish to extend our sincere appreciation to all victims groups and civil society organizations involved in documentation efforts who have contributed so fundamentally to what we saw in court this week. Our commitment to continually build and strengthen our relationship with civil society is as firm as ever. In the last reporting period, our office had over 186 engagements with CSO partners, including through the virtual roundtable with over 35 organizations that I was pleased to participate in recently. And in those discussions, I have been clear. The office is working intensively to ensure that the presence of Mr. El-Hishri in the ICC courtroom reflects only the start of a much more profound journey towards meaningful justice. As reflected in my report, the Libya Unified Team is on the ground in many locations, collecting a wide range of information and evidence in support of our investigations into crimes related to the 2014 to 2020 operations, as well as further expanding accountability efforts in relation to crimes committed in detention facilities in both the west and the east of Libya. Indeed, currently, a total of 9 public arrest warrants in the situation await execution. There remain other hidden stories of intense cruelty in Libya, which together we can also bring into the light. To those responsible for alleged Rome Statute crimes in Libya, to those carrying them out, to those facilitating them and ordering them, we have a simple message. Know that our office remains committed to delivering accountability for your acts, and we are moving at a speed across our lines of inquiry to ensure the rights of those that you have mistreated are vindicated in a court of law, as we saw here in The Hague this week. Mr. President, Excellencies, our report also recognizes the encouraging recommitment of the government of Libya to engage with the court. We have in our report referred to Libya's Article 12.3 declaration under the Rome Statute, which was made to the court last year. This has led to real improvements in cooperation and has also led to the decision to extend some of our key lines of inquiry until the end of 2027. The enhanced forms of engagement we have developed together in this framework have had a tangible positive impact on our investigations and also with respect to the confirmation hearing of Mr. El-Hishri. Here we see, I believe, the true potential of the mandate provided by this Council. The ICC and the government of Libya engaging effectively, reducing the space for atrocities, holding perpetrators to account, and thereby strengthening the basis for stability and peace in Libya. Combined with our strong collaboration with civil society, this represents a new coalition for accountability in Libya under the legal framework provided by Resolution 1970. I wish to commend in particular His Excellency the President of the Presidential Council of Libya, Mr. Mohammed El-Menfi, and His Excellency Mr. Abdul Hamid Dbeibeh, Prime Minister of Libya, for the strong cooperation and support from their offices. I also wish to recognize the important cooperative role played by His Excellency the Ambassador of Libya to the Netherlands, Mr. Zaid Dagim. However, as reflected in my report, the picture of cooperation from Libyan authorities is not uniform. With real steps forward, while real steps forward are taken in some areas, in others we have seen stagnation or even regression. It is my hope in particular that the momentum felt in The Hague this week may provide a catalyst for stronger cooperation and collaboration. It is essential in particular that we receive better communication, a stronger response with respect to the arrest of suspects that our office is aware remain in Libya at present. A failure to do so represents a clear breach of the mandate provided by this Council. Mr. President, Excellencies, the central role of partnerships in our efforts to deliver justice is further reflected in the fact that the ICC was not the only courtroom in which judicial proceedings have been seen in relation to the situation in Libya in this reporting period. Our investigations with respect to crimes against migrants from the Horn of Africa in Libya proceeds at a positive pace and has continued to benefit from excellent collaboration with a range of national authorities as well as with our Europol partners in a joint team. And this collaboration is delivering real results. On the 27th of January of this year, Mr. Tewelde Gautam, an Eritrean national, was convicted in a Dutch district court and sentenced to 20 years imprisonment for human smuggling and extortion of migrants and refugees in Libya. A second defendant, Mr. Kidane Zacharias Haptamariam, accused of similar offenses, has recently been extradited from the United Arab Emirates to the Netherlands to stand trial. In both of these cases, the ICC Office of the Prosecutor has provided concrete information and evidence to the Netherlands authorities that have directly supported national investigations and ultimately, through our collective action, has led to further results for victims. This represents an undertaking made by the Office of the Prosecutor. 2 years ago, as we launched our policy on complementarity and cooperation, we committed to increasing our support for domestic investigations into international crimes. We now see that policy come to life in Dutch domestic courts for Libyan victims. And we remain strongly committed to further expanding the support we provide to national authorities across situations addressed by the ICC. Mr. President, Excellencies, if I may, I would like to conclude as I began, with the voices of victims that we heard so clearly in the courtroom of the ICC here in The Hague this week, with the direct words of one victim reflecting on this moment. El Hishri's arrest bridges a distance many of us survivors of crimes at Mitiga thought would never close. We now carry not only renewed trust in the possibility of justice, but also a duty toward those who died, those still alive but made socially dead by torture and violence, and those who still cannot speak because they fear retaliation. It is through these words, through the proceedings of the last days, that we see the deep relevance of justice to victims of conflict and atrocity crimes. We have seen the powerful hope that accountability can bring even in the darkest of spaces. That is the same hope that this Council expressed 15 years ago when it referred the situation to the ICC. Much time has passed since then. But we have seen clearly, without any doubt, that this hope remains. It has not been extinguished. Victims, CSOs, working together with our office, have not allowed it to fade. By cooperating more effectively, by partnering with Libyan authorities, by meeting the desires of the Libyan people for justice, and by showing clearly to those inflicting suffering in Libya that they will see consequences for their actions. In the coming period, we will continue to move to fulfill the mandate of this Council in a more profound manner. To do this, we need your support, the support of all states, so that we may show Libyans that the hope given by this Council will now truly be vindicated. I thank you.
I thank Deputy Prosecutor Khan for her briefing. And I'll give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. And I'll give the floor to the representative of Somali.
Thank you, Mr. President. We listened carefully to Deputy Prosecutor Khan's briefing and took note of the International Criminal Court's 29th report pursuant to Resolution 1970. I welcome the participation of the Permanent Representative of Libya in today's meeting. Mr. President, while justice and accountability are central to peace and stability, transitional justice remains vital to achieving national reconciliation and lasting peace in Libya. In that context, my delegation would like to make the following points. First, strengthening national justice institutions must remain a priority, empowering national authorities to lead this process. An environment that builds the capacity of local institutions to administer justice remains essential for sustainable peace. Second, existing legal frameworks should be reinforced and, where appropriate, adapted to respond to the evolving circumstances. In this regard, we note Mr. Harish's surrender to the ICC custody and the commencement of the pretrial proceedings. This month, the judicial accountability is sustainable only when rooted in national efforts, aspirations, and it reinforces domestic ownership. Third, Libyan leadership in addressing justice must take precedence, supported by regional and African mechanisms. This Council should remain vigilant about the role of external factors and monitor these dynamics transparently, ensuring sovereign solutions guide the path forward. Mr. President, true partnerships require mutual agreement, and we encourage constructive dialogue between the Office of the Prosecutor and relevant Libyan national legal authorities to achieve shared objectives in a spirit of mutual respect and complementarity. Moreover, a comprehensive approach that integrates judicial accountability, humanitarian support, and diplomatic engagement remains essential to advancing nationally led, nationally owned initiatives toward justice and peace. In conclusion, Mr. President, the international community and this Council should fully support Libya's pursuit to justice, stability, and reconciliation while respecting Libya's national sovereignty, territorial integrity, unity, and political independence. Somalia remains committed to playing an active role toward these objectives. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Somalia for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Deputy Prosecutor Khan, for your briefing. We regret that you once again were not able to brief the Council in person, as mandated by the Council, due to a visa not being issued. We reiterate our concern that this severely limits the Council's opportunity to follow up on important matters referred to the ICC. I would also like to welcome the permanent representative of Libya to the meeting today. Mr. President, allow me to make 3 points. First, Denmark welcomes the substantial progress made by the Office of the Prosecutor in pursuing its mandate under Resolution 1970. We are particularly pleased to note that the surrender of Mr. al-Hishri to ICC custody has enabled the start of judicial proceedings. This marks a significant and encouraging milestone towards accountability for victims and affected communities, as well as for the response of the ICC to the referral by this Council. We express our sincere appreciation to Germany for their support in facilitating this important step, and we urge all state parties to comply correspondingly with their cooperation obligations under the Rome Statute. In light of these achievements, we recall earlier statements by the Office of the Prosecutor on completing the investigations under this referral and encourage the Office to elaborate on the status of these efforts in the next report. Mr. President, my second point. We recognize the steps taken by the Libyan government to strengthen its cooperation with the Office of the Prosecutor in line with Resolution 1970 and Libya's declaration under Article 12.3 of the Rome Statute. In this context, however, we once again urge the Libyan Attorney General to increase its cooperation with the court in accordance with its obligations. This includes providing access to its investigations into crimes in Tahuna, as well as responding to requests for assistance concerning Mitika prison. It also entails the surrender of suspects subject to ICC arrest warrants. My third point, Mr. President. Denmark stresses the importance of engagement with civil society and victim associations, which is key to strengthening the fight against impunity. In this regard, we recognize and are pleased to note the Office of the Prosecutor's continued engagement. To conclude, Mr. President, I wish to reiterate Denmark's unwavering support for the court as an independent judicial institution. Continued support for the court's efforts to ensure accountability is essential to the completion of the Libyan reconciliation process, as well as underpinning UNSMIL's efforts to promote sustainable peace in Libya. We remain firm in our commitment to defend the court and the principles and values enshrined in the Rome Statute. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Denmark for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of France.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, I'd like to thank Deputy Prosecutor Khan for presenting the 31st report submitted pursuant to Resolution 1970, and I regret that, as Denmark said just now, that the Deputy Prosecutor was unable to address the Council in person due to a lack of visa. France underscores the importance of respecting the obligations arising from the Headquarters Agreement of the United Nations. It notes that this is the second time that such a situation has occurred, and recalls that the Council's ability to hear persons it invites under Article 39 of its Provisional Rules of Procedure must not depend on the positions or decisions of any state, whoever that may be. Mr. President, it is nevertheless useful that this meeting can be held by video conference, given the importance of the court's work in Libya, on which I would like to emphasize 3 points. Firstly, the ICC's action in Libya is producing results. The arrest and surrender to the court of Khalid Mohammed Ali el-Hishri on the 1st of December of last year, pursuant to an arrest warrant issued by the pre-trial chamber for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity, constitutes a major step forward in the fight against impunity. It sends a strong message to victims, the Libyan population, that is, the ability of international justice to respond to the most serious crimes and hold accountable those that are accused of committing them. The arrest and appearance of Ali el-Hishri are the result of painstaking investigative work. The collection and analysis of evidence, missions conducted in several states, and the use of a wide range of investigative tools involving audio and video materials, forensic data, satellite imagery, and more. This investigative work continues in Libya and will lead undoubtedly to further arrests and additional indictments. We have also followed very closely this week the confirmation of charges hearing in the al-Hishri affair. We also highlight the efforts undertaken to locate individuals who remain subject to public arrest warrants and recall the importance of the full cooperation of all concerned states with the court in the execution of those warrants. Mr. President, secondly, the effectiveness of the ICC depends on effective cooperation with the Libyan authorities, third states, and civil society. With regard to Libya, the declaration made under Article 12.3 of the Rome Statute is a positive first step. We call on the Libyan authorities to cooperate fully with the ICC in order to achieve tangible results for victims and for the Libyan population. This Libyan declaration remains in force until the end of 2027. As the Office of the Prosecutor has already noted, an investigation cannot continue indefinitely. France, therefore, on this point, notes the Office of the Prosecutor's statement, according to which her office feels that various lines of investigation in this situation will be capable of being concluded by the end of 2027. Cooperation regarding the situation in Libya also includes cooperation between the ICC and the courts of third states, in accordance with the principle of complementarity. One example is the cooperation between the Office of the Prosecutor with members of the Joint Investigation Team, particularly the Netherlands, whose courts, as has been said, recently handed down a conviction on human smuggling against an Eritrean smuggler. This demonstrates determined and effective action against those responsible for serious human rights violations linked to human trafficking. Cooperation between the prosecutor's office is also effective, working together with Libyan civil society organizations and victims associations. This is essential cooperation not only for the effectiveness of investigations, but also for taking victims' expectations into account. Mr. President, thirdly, The ICC's work contributes to the broader United Nations efforts to revive the political process in Libya. A solution is emerging that could allow Libya to regain its unity, stability, and sovereignty. We renew our support for the Special Representative of the Secretary-General for Libya, Ms. Hannah Tete. We must support the implementation of her roadmap for the resumption of the political process in Libya, which is essential to advance the unification of institutions, including the government, and the organization of free, transparent, and inclusive elections throughout Libyan territory. The enthusiasm generated by the most recent municipal elections reflects the Libyan people's aspiration to decide their own future. The pursuit of justice and the rejection of impunity are also aspirations of the Libyan people. It is to these aspirations that the ICC responds, not alone, but together with other competent jurisdictions. Those who criticize the ICC would do well to remember this. Mr. President, the Court can continue to count on France's unwavering support for its independent and impartial work, whether in Libya or elsewhere. That support also entails a refusal, namely the refusal of sanctions imposed against the Court, its personnel, and those who cooperate with it. We once again call for those sanctions to be lifted. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I must reiterate our ongoing, unequivocal opposition to the ICC's attempts to assert jurisdiction over the United States or any U.S. ally that has not consented to ICC jurisdiction. The core U.S. objections to the ICC have been the same for nearly 3 decades. To date, however, we have seen no indication that the ICC intends to reform its behavior or that states parties will exercise appropriate oversight and management of the court. As our long-standing concerns have not been realized, our response has escalated in proportion to the threat presented by the ICC and to the degree to which our concerns remain unaddressed. We will continue to take action as needed to safeguard U.S. interests. Let me repeat that. We will continue to take action as needed to safeguard U.S. interests. Turning now to Libya, the United States remains concerned about the lack of respect for rule of law, including in official and unofficial detention facilities across the country, that has allowed abuses to occur with impunity. Lasting political stability in Libya requires a genuine commitment to rule of law, including holding accountable perpetrators of serious human rights abuses. U.S. efforts led by Senior Advisor for Arab and African Affairs, Masad Boulos, to support the unification of Libyan institutions are grounded in the desire of the Libyan people for a government that serves their interests and respects their fundamental rights and freedoms. The United States also encourages Libya to uphold the independence, integrity, and unity of its judiciary. In this regard, we would note the importance of addressing the increasing divisions in and politicization of the judicial system detailed in the Secretary General's recent report to avoid undermining a key pillar of the Libyan state. We reiterate our long-standing calls on Libyan authorities to ensure that former senior officials of the Gaddafi regime face justice. Ending impunity for those who commit serious human rights abuses in Libya is critical for the country's continued progress on a path to greater unity, stability, and prosperity. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Господин председатель. Mr. President, we are here today to consider the 31st report of the Prosecutor's Office of the so-called International Criminal Court on the Libya file, which the ICC has been working on for 15 years now. From the report, we have learned about impressive results, the first arrest and the beginning of proceedings. It's worth noting that the first arrest has nothing to do with the events of 2011. In connection with which the Security Council referred the situation to the ICC. On Libya, the ICC has chosen the following strategy. First, it helped legitimize the destruction of Libyan statehood as a result of NATO's aggression by advancing false accusations that were never proven. Then, on the basis of those accusations, it issued arrest warrants against Libyan leaders, all of whom have ended up dead. First, Muammar Gaddafi was torn to pieces before the eyes of the international community, and then, recently, his son, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, was killed. Both of those cases were closed in connection with the deaths of the accused, and no one is interested in who was involved in those murders. This begs the conclusion, is the ICC operating like a lynch mob? The crimes of NATO countries during the 2011 events is not something the ICC has taken any interest in. Evidently, they enjoy permanent immunity from the jurisdiction of this pseudo-court. The ICC's investigation of the events of 2011 ended with that. It seems that in that situation, the ICC should have reported to the Council that it was not able to fulfill the instructions given to it to conduct an investigation and then close the case. But that is not how so-called international justice operates. The Libya file was reformatted to focus on the supposed crimes in prisons in subsequent years, which also did not lead to any results. Then, the ICC exceeded the clearly outlined mandate issued by the Security Council and decided to take an interest in crimes against migrants, which Security Council Resolution 1970 doesn't say a single word about. But also in this area, the ICC continues to adhere to its established strategy. Despite the appeals of civil society, it is not investigating the actions of European forces and political leaders who initially created the migration crisis by destroying Libya's statehood and then distinguished themselves with a whole host of crimes against migrants, including blocking access to their own ports for ships carrying people in great distress. Instead of that, the ICC prosecutor is carrying out joint investigative actions with European structures that are potentially implicated in crimes against migrants. These people do indeed enjoy genuine immunity at the ICC. At the end of the day, they are its patrons, and the patrons are never put on trial. The accusations, rather, are brought against pawns and middlemen from developing countries. Mr. President, these are the successes of the ICC on Libya. At the same time, the pseudo-court is boasting of its 18 missions and almost 700 pieces of evidence and other activities. We cannot help but wonder, what has all of this achieved for the Libyan people? The civil war that was triggered by NATO's aggression has dragged on for years. Thousands of civilians have died and the country remains divided. The portal Just Security, that is well known in the West, recently published an investigation by the professor of Illinois University, Professor Prorok, who came to the conclusion that the ICC's interference in civil wars not only does nothing to help end them, but on the contrary, drags them out and blocks the beginning of peace negotiations. The court's participation scares people away from participating in the negotiating process, and the ICC's intransigent position on amnesties, which are often a necessary part of peace agreements, leaves the parties to the conflict with fewer incentives to pursue a political solution. In addition to this, the ICC itself is mired in scandals and double standards. As we have already said, we've told you already who enjoys immunity from the ICC's justice or from convictions by the state's parties. It's patrons, it's backers. One telling situation is the failure of Italy, a European state party to the Rome Statute, to comply with its obligations in January 2025. The court merely took note of the violations and formally referred the matter to the Assembly of States Parties. We were interested to learn about the recent revelations by the so-called prosecutor of the ICC, Karim Khan, in the media, saying that the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, his fellow countryman, David Cameron, directly threatened him with consequences for the ICC if it were to launch proceedings against the leadership of Israel. Statements like this only confirm what is already obvious. Western countries see this pseudo-court as a purely political instrument. This is particularly convenient for the man who has been accused of sexual harassment and has taken a leave of absence, the pseudo-prosecutor and the British citizen Karim Khan. Particular attention should be paid to reports of his attempts to use his office to put pressure on a supposed victim and to conceal the circumstances of a case. At the same time, contrary to the evident facts, this British subject, in interviews that he has given, continues to assert that he has been fully exonerated. We would not be surprised if the trial against Karim Khan over time is wound up, just like this citizen swept under the carpet the numerous crimes of his Western backers, and to do so he thought up the term deprioritize. Mr. President, as we have underscored many times, a sustainable settlement in Libya will only be possible by strengthening national institutions rather than through externally imposed constructs. The principle of complementarity gives priority to the national justice system, even if the state has made a statement under Article 12(3) of the Rome Statute. The ICC systematically ignores that principle, usurping the will of the Libyan people and devaluing the actions that the Libyan authorities are taking to establish their own accountability mechanisms. In that regard, we would like to recall that the UN support mission in Libya and other UN representatives, they do not have a mandate to cooperate with the ICC. We once again call on the Security Council to acknowledge that the ICC's actions in Libya have not been successful, and we call upon the Security Council to withdraw the Libyan file from the ICC, leaving law enforcement to the Libyan authorities, with the support of the relevant UN entities. And the same should be done with the Darfur file. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Colombia.
Colombia thanks the Presidency for convening this meeting on the activities carried out by the Office of the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court in Libya since November 2025, within the framework of Security Council Resolution 1970 of 2011. My country also welcomes the permanent representative of Libya to the meeting. Likewise, Colombia would like to thank the Deputy Prosecutor for her report and regrets that it was not possible to have her present in person. Mr. President, Colombia supports peace efforts in Libya and has drawn attention to the importance of the Council remaining alert to the risks of escalation that threatened the stability achieved since the 2020 ceasefire. In this regard, it is concerning that the report points to growing divisions in Tripoli and to increasing fragmentation among judicial institutions. Nevertheless, Libya is an example of positive complementarity. Colombia is familiar with the positive effects of positive complementarity in its own transition towards peace and understands the circumstances that Libya is facing. Therefore, we know that harmonious cooperation with the Office of the Prosecutor of the ICC can contribute to combating impunity for the most atrocious crimes and can help to consolidate peace. Colombia reiterates its call on the Libyan government and, in particular, on that country's prosecutorial authorities to continue cooperating with the office so that its investigations may continue to bear fruit and those most responsible may be arrested and brought to justice. We also appreciate the willingness of third states to cooperate with the prosecutor's office. We urge the Libyan authorities, neighboring states and all states to continue cooperating with the office in order to guarantee access to the field and the arrest of suspects when they are found on their territory, particularly in the case of states parties to the Rome Statute in light of the provisions of Article 12.3. Mr. President, the prosecutor's office still has much work ahead of it. It is troubling to see confirmation that there are indeed reasonable grounds to believe that in Libya, particularly in Mitiga prison in Tripoli, crimes against humanity and war crimes were committed. It's also worrying to hear reports concerning the commission of crimes against migrants. In view of this, Colombia calls for the prosecutor's office to be provided with all necessary support to obtain the relevant evidence and to continue ensuring the protection of witnesses against the risk of reprisals. Colombia wishes to emphasize that victims are and must always continue to be at the center of all of the court's work in Libya. We must remind them that it is indeed possible to achieve the accountability they so strongly demand in order to continue along the path toward peace. For its part, Colombia welcomes and encourages continued cooperation between the prosecutor's office and civil society organizations that document crimes committed in Libya. Mr. President, it is necessary for the prosecutor's office to continue carrying out its work independently and impartially, free from outside interference of any kind. Colombia rejects interference in its work through sanctions imposed against the court or its judges or officials. To achieve genuine peace, truth, justice, and reconciliation are indispensable. Therefore, Colombia recognizes all the work carried out by the prosecutor's office and reiterates its unwavering support for the court, while inviting all states, whether parties to the Rome Statute or not, to continue cooperating with it. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Colombia for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Mr. President, the Democratic Republic of the Congo would like to thank China for convening this meeting to consider the report of the International Criminal Court on Libya. My delegation welcomes the Deputy Prosecutor, Ms. Najat Shamin Khan, and would like to thank her for presenting the aforementioned report, which she has just done in application of Resolution 1970 of the Security Council, which referred the situation in Libya to the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. The Democratic Republic of the Congo would like to take this opportunity to reaffirm its constant commitment to international justice, in particular to the Rome Statute. We reiterate our commitment to respecting the principles of the independence and universality of the International Criminal Court, a court which was created precisely to put an end to impunity for the most serious crimes, such as crimes against humanity, war crimes, crimes of aggression, and the crime of genocide. For that reason, the formulation of the Rome Statute, which is merely theoretical for some, is a reality for the affected populations, particularly those from regions that are in the grip of violence and instability, which they are enduring on a daily basis. Wars and all forms of violence that deny the dignity and the sacred nature of human beings do not recognize nationality. This reality, which we cannot ignore, is something that concerns us all, and cooperation with the International Criminal Court must form the basis upon which we work. Mr. President, my delegation notes that the 31st report of the prosecutor of the court has focused in particular on achievements, difficulties faced, and progress that has been made thus far. It notes significant progress in 4 major areas of investigation: the violence in 2011, crimes in detention centers, crimes linked to the 2014 to 2020 operations, and abuses committed against migrants. From the point of view of cooperation with the court, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which was the first state party to have developed meaningful cooperation with the court, congratulates the Libyan authorities because although Libya is not a state party to the Rome Statute, the country has formally recognized the court's authority to investigate crimes committed on its territory since 2011. Along the same lines, my country encourages increased cooperation with the neighboring countries of Libya to help put together additional files and to bring new cases at the national and international levels in accordance with the principle of complementarity. The Democratic Republic of the Congo takes note of national investigations underway and the issuance of arrest warrants by the Libyan authorities regarding the Tahuna mass graves. This represents a crucial step towards accountability and justice for the victims and their families. Regarding the progress that has been made, the Democratic Republic of the Congo notes with satisfaction that in paragraph 9 of the report, the prosecutor's office notes the arrest of Khaled Mohammed Ali El-Hishri, charged on 17 counts for war crimes and crimes against humanity for presumed acts committed at Mitiga prison, including murder, torture, persecution, enslavement, as well as rape and other acts of sexual violence against Libyan women and men, as well as African migrants between 2014 and 2020. We welcome this step in the judicial proceedings against Mohammed Ali El-Hishri, and we reiterate the call for an end to impunity in Libya. My delegation hopes to see the authorities cooperate further with the Office of the Prosecutor in order to conduct equitable and impartial investigations and prosecutions against all of the presumed perpetrators, regardless of their power or their influence. The Democratic Republic of the Congo recalls that on the 15th of February 2011, the Security Council, in its resolution 1970, referred the situation in Libya to the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. Today, more than 15 years later, the office has passed a significant milestone. For the first time, a suspect has been transferred to the International Criminal Court regarding the situation in Libya, and pre-trial proceedings have been launched for the first time since this situation was referred by the Council in 2011. This is an encouraging development which could help put an end to impunity and achieve justice for all of the victims. Despite the signs of structural dysfunction and fragmentation that have been observed within the judicial institutions in the eastern and western regions of the country, as is noted in paragraph 20 of the report. Mr. President, the Democratic Republic of the Congo notes with satisfaction the significant progress that has been made, as mentioned in paragraph 69, which reports the declaration by the Libyan government accepting the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court under Article 12(3) of the Rome Statute. This decision is manifest evidence of the Libyan authorities' commitment to justice and to accountability in Libya. My delegation also calls upon the Libyan government to actively cooperate with the Office of the Prosecutor in order to allow for the execution of arrest warrants targeting suspects of the International Criminal Court that are present on its territory. The support of the Libyan authorities remains essential so that the perpetrators of these crimes answer for their actions before justice. Mr. President, notwithstanding the aforementioned achievements, it should be noted that during the period under consideration and in the context of its activities, the office has nevertheless faced certain difficulties linked to a lack of cooperation from the Libyan side, including limited access to a number of documents, a lack of response to certain requests for assistance, focusing on key information, as well as mobility restrictions. Aware of the irreplaceable role of justice as a factor in social cohesion, national reconciliation, peace, security, and stability, the Democratic Republic of the Congo is convinced that peace and justice are complementary. And by way of conclusion, my delegation would like to make 3 requests. First of all, we call upon the Libyan authorities to do everything possible to allow the Office of the Prosecutor to effectively fulfill its mandate in accordance with Resolution 1970 of the Security Council. 2, we encourage the Libyan authorities to continue their cooperation with the Office of the Prosecutor, including by granting the office access to the requested documents and by responding to requests for assistance focusing on key information as well as regarding mobility constraints. Thirdly and finally, we encourage the continuation of national investigations underway and the issuance of arrest warrants by the Libyan authorities regarding the Tahuna mass graves, as well as strengthening cooperation with neighboring states of Libya in accordance with the principle of complementarity, which represents a crucial step towards accountability and justice for the victims and their families. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the DRC for the statement. I now give the floor to Liberia.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. We thank the prosecutor for her briefing and welcome the participation of the distinguished permanent representative of Libya. Mr. President, Liberia has seen what happens when a country fragments and territories are governed by competing authorities. In such systems, the administration of justice becomes more challenging, if not elusive. We know this model. Institutions hollow out in competition with each other for authority and public trust, only to lose both. We note efforts by the Libyan authorities toward this end, and Liberia calls for support to Libya in this regard. Mr. President, accountability in Libya cannot be treated only as a narrow judicial matter. It is fundamentally both an economic and political question. As long as armed factions retain control, impunity is likely to persist. Justice will remain obstructed not only by capacity gaps, but by entrenched interest. This dynamic must be addressed in the following manner. First, mandate regular public reporting on compliance with Resolution 1970, including the identification of individuals and entities that obstruct cooperation with the court. Second, support a unified justice coordination framework under UN leadership. Fragmented support efforts risk reinforcing fragmentation on the ground. A consolidated platform can better align international assistance with Libyan institutional needs and reduce duplication. Third, formally acknowledge non-compliance and establish time-bound expectations for collective actions with clear implications for sanctions where necessary. Fourth, establish and adequately resource a mechanism for witness and victim protection. Finally, Mr. President, personal or factional economic gains cannot take precedence over the unity and stability of the Libyan state. Regional and other international engagement must be aligned with a unified and accountable governance system in Libya. This Council bears responsibility to ensure that the commitments it has made concerning Libya are implemented in practice. Toward this end, the Libyan people are not waiting for ideal conditions. They deserve and are waiting for credible actions toward unity, peace, justice, and stability. No one wants it more than the people of Libya. Liberia recommits to the unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Libya. And I thank you for your attention.
I thank the representative of Liberia for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Panama.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank the Deputy Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Nazat Shamin Khan, for her updates, and we welcome the presence of the Permanent Representative of Libya at this meeting. We regret once again that the Deputy Prosecutor, for reasons beyond her control, has not been able to be here present today to brief the Council on the important matters that we are dealing with. Panama recognizes the important work of the International Criminal Court and of the Office of the Prosecutor in carrying out the mandate entrusted to it by this Council through Resolution 1970. We reaffirm that this referral, adopted under Chapter 7 of the Charter of the United Nations, creates fully binding legal obligations for Member States. Panama values the substantive progress reflected in the Court's recent report, which marks a key milestone in the ongoing investigations. We highlight the surrender of Mr. Khaled Mohammed Ali El-Hishri to the custody of the Court in December 2025 by the Federal Republic of Germany, as well as the commencement of judicial proceedings which are currently at the preliminary stage. The proceedings before the court against Mr. El-Hishri, who faces charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity committed at Mitiga prison between 2014 and 2020, constitute a milestone in the investigations and a step forward towards accountability in that country. We recognize the steady progress of the investigations, the effective cooperation among states, and the intensified engagement with civil society, survivors of crimes, and human rights defenders, thereby strengthening the work of the Office of the Prosecutor. We welcome the progress made in complementarity with national authorities, including the cooperation of the Libyan authorities, and we urge all competent institutions to respond promptly to the Court's requests for assistance, in line with Resolution 1970, adopted by this Council. As a state party to the Rome Statute, Panama reiterates its firm support for the independence of the International Criminal Court, and rejects any coercive measures or reprisals that may affect the Court's mandate, including those directed against its personnel or against those who cooperate with it. Panama reaffirms that progress in these proceedings represents an essential step toward accountability and justice for victims. The Libyan people and the migrants who pass through its territory have suffered the consequences of these serious crimes, and they deserve truth, justice, and guarantees of non-repetition. We reiterate Panama's firm commitment to strengthening the rule of law and to the independent work of the International Criminal Court as a fundamental pillar of international justice. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Panama for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Latvia.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank the Deputy Prosecutor, Madame Najat Khan, of the International Criminal Court for her comprehensive briefing and for the continued efforts of the Office of the Prosecutor to advance accountability for crimes committed in Libya. Today, I would like to highlight the following points. First, Latvia commends the significant progress achieved by the Office of the Prosecutor during this reporting period. In particular, the arrest, surrender, and transfer of El-Hishri to the custody of the ICC. The confirmation of charges hearing that took place this week was a landmark moment for victims and survivors in Libya. This hearing is a testament to those most affected by El-Hishri that no one is above the law, not even the most powerful. I would like to quote the sobering words of the victim P1736. I quote, "I will be reborn when the justice is achieved." End of quote. This testimony and this hearing is a tangible proof that the mandate given by this Council under Resolution 1970 can bring justice to the victims and accountability for the most heinous crimes committed in Libya. Second, the cycle of impunity in Libya must end. Accountability is indispensable, both justice for victims and for restoring trust in institutions, deterring future violations, and laying the foundation for sustainable peace and stability in Libya. We recognize the steps taken by the Libyan government to strengthen cooperation with the court. At the same time, further cooperation from the Libyan Office of the Attorney General remains essential. This includes providing the Office of the Prosecutor with access to investigations into crimes committed in Tarhuna and Mitiga prisons, as well as information sharing regarding the progress of national proceedings against Mr. Najim and Tarhuna suspects. Likewise, outstanding arrest warrants cannot remain unenforced. All remaining suspects subject to the ICC arrest warrants must be surrendered to the ICC in accordance with the Council's Resolution 1970 in order to establish that perpetrators of atrocity crimes are not beyond the reach of justice. Third, we welcome the strengthened engagement with the Office of the Prosecutor, with the civil society, victims and human rights defenders. The increased engagement of the Libya Unified Team with the civil society has contributed to trust building with the affected communities and is indispensable for advancing accountability efforts. Lastly, we stress the importance of safeguarding the independence of the court, its efforts to defend the principles enshrined in the Rome Statute, and to ensure the accountability for gravest crimes under international law. I thank you.
I thank Latvia for the statement. And I'll give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me begin by welcoming the distinguished representative of Libya to today's Council meeting. I also thank Deputy Prosecutor Khan for her briefing to the Council today and for her presentation of the Office's latest report. As other colleagues have said, we regret that the Deputy Prosecutor was unable to brief the Council in person today, as mandated by the Security Council. Mr. President, I will make 3 points. First, the UK welcomes the progress reported by the Office of the Prosecutor since the last briefing. In particular, we note the conclusion yesterday of the confirmation of charges hearing in the case of Khalid Mohammed Ali al-Hishri. This follows his arrest and surrender to the court late last year. These proceedings represent an important moment for victims and affected communities in Libya. Indeed, it is noteworthy that many victims of these alleged crimes were among those represented in the proceedings before the court this week. Such proceedings serve as a clear demonstration that accountability can be delivered. Mr. President, the UK also welcomes the Office of the Prosecutor's ongoing engagement with national authorities in line with the principle of complementarity. In particular, we note that information provided by the ICC Office of the Prosecutor assisted in domestic proceedings relating to alleged human trafficking offences in the Netherlands. This is reflective of effective cooperation between the Office of the Prosecutor and domestic authorities. We also urge the Libyan authorities, including the Office of the Attorney General, to take steps in support of continued progress on accountability. Finally, Mr. President, the UK underlines our continued support for the court and its independence. We do not support the sanctioning of individuals or organisations associated with the court. Mr. President, accountability remains key to ensuring stability in Libya. The progress reported today is encouraging in that regard. For our own part, the UK reiterates our support for the court in its efforts to deliver justice for the people of Libya. Thank you.
I thank the United Kingdom for the statement. And I'll give the floor to the representative of Bahrain.
سيد الرئيس بداية أرحب بنائبة المدعي العام للمحكمة.
Mr. President, at the outset, I wish to welcome the Deputy Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Ms. Khan, and we welcome His Excellency Mr. Taher El-Sani, Permanent Representative of the Kindred State of Libya. Here I would like to focus on three key points. First, reaffirming the importance of respecting the judicial sovereignty of the Libyan state. The Kingdom of Bahrain has taken note of the fact that the State of Libya in May 2025 submitted a declaration to the International Criminal Court pursuant to Article 12(3) of the Rome Statute, allowing the International Criminal Court to exercise its jurisdiction over crimes committed on Libyan territory from 2011 until the end of the year 2027. We have also taken note of the continued engagement between the Office of the Prosecutor and the Libyan national authorities in accordance with the principle of complementarity enshrined in the Rome Statute. This principle underscores the central role of national judicial authorities and the supportive and complementary role of the ICC. In this regard, we stress the importance of respecting the judicial sovereignty of the Libyan state and ensuring that cooperation with the ICC contributes to strengthening the capacity of the national institutions without prejudice to their primary jurisdiction nor their ownership of the judicial process. Second, there is a need to intensify cooperation with Libyan authorities in cases requiring cross-border procedures. We underscore the importance of close cooperation between the Libyan state and states in which arrest warrants issued by the ICC are executed outside of Libyan territory. We underscore the need to complete extradition procedures outside of Libya in accordance with international law, while at the same time respecting the sovereignty of Libya and its judicial jurisdiction. Enhancing coordination between the Office of the Prosecutor and the Libyan authorities, as well as states concerned, is an essential step for the implementation of legal obligations and to combat impunity. Third, reaffirming the responsibility of states in the implementation of international law. The Kingdom of Bahrain reaffirms the central role and fundamental responsibility borne by all member states in respecting and implementing international law, including international humanitarian law. The same goes for the prevention of the most serious crimes under international law and the prosecution of the perpetrators. It also stresses that accountability must be pursued in a manner consistent with the principles of international law, including respect for the sovereignty of states. The principle of complementarity is essential in this regard. It ensures respect for the position of the state concerned and its full ownership of the judicial process. Achieving justice in Libya depends on a strengthening lasting peace, including through support for national efforts, capacity building in responsible institutions, particularly those responsible for accountability and transitional justice. We must support Libyan initiatives and the United Nations efforts aimed at strengthening the foundations of reconciliation and to fulfill the aspirations of the brotherly Libyan people. In conclusion, the Kingdom of Bahrain reiterates its support for the efforts of the United Nations aimed at supporting the Libyan state in its path towards national reconciliation and the restoration of security and stability. We reaffirm our support for cooperation with the United Nations and international partners in order to strengthen the rule of law and achieve justice. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Bahrain for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I welcome the participation of the distinguished permanent representative of Libya in today's meeting. Let me also thank Deputy Prosecutor Nazat Shamim Khan for her briefing and presentation of the 31st report of the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court pursuant to Security Council Resolution 1970. Pakistan takes note of the report and the developments outlined therein, including the progress made in investigative activities, engagement with Libyan authorities, and cooperation with relevant international and regional partners. We note in particular the commencement of pre-trial proceedings following the surrender of Mr. El-Hishri to the court, the first surrender of a suspect to the ICC in the Libyan situation. President, I will make 4 points. First, Pakistan reaffirms its steadfast support for Libya's sovereignty, independence, territorial integrity, and national unity. A Libyan-led and Libyan-owned political process remains the only viable path towards sustainable peace, stability, and reconciliation in our brotherly country. Accountability efforts should reinforce this objective. Second, while Pakistan is not a party to the Rome Statute, we remain committed to the objective of credible and impartial accountability for serious international crimes. In this regard, consistency, objectivity, and non-selectivity are essential for strengthening confidence in the international justice system. The legitimacy and credibility of international accountability mechanisms can only be sustained through the uniform application of international law and adherence to the principles of fairness and impartiality. Third, cooperation between the court and the Libyan authorities remains important for the implementation of Resolution 1970. We encourage continued constructive engagement between the Office of the Prosecutor and all relevant Libyan institutions in a manner that is fully respectful of Libya's judicial sovereignty, national institutions, and legitimate concerns. National ownership and capacity building should remain central to all accountability efforts. Fourth, we support all Libyan-led initiatives aimed at preserving judicial unity, upholding the rule of law, and strengthening constitutional oversight. Finally, Mr. President, Pakistan reiterates its support for all efforts aimed at promoting peace, stability, reconciliation, and institution building in Libya. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank Deputy Prosecutor Nazat Khan, as well as the Office of the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court for the presentation of the 31st report pursuant to Resolution 1970 regarding the referral of the situation in Libya. I would also like to welcome the participation of the Permanent Representative of Libya in today's meeting. Mr. President, at the outset, we wish to underscore the significant judicial developments regarding the El-Hishri case following the surrender of the suspect to the court and the commencement of judicial proceedings. This marks a significant step forward in combating impunity in Libya. We also take note of the progress made as to the conclusion of the investigative activities on crimes concerning the line of inquiry on the 2011 violence. Currently, the court has 9 outstanding public arrest warrants, 4 of which relate to these crimes. We also welcome the continued investigative work of the Office of the Prosecutor. During this reporting period, the Office of the Prosecutor collected over 690 items of evidence, conducted over 15 interviews, assessed more than 19 witnesses, and transmitted 19 requests for assistance to states and international organizations, receiving a wide range of support, including from 9 national enforcement and prosecutorial authorities. In this regard, Greece wishes to underline the efforts undertaken by the Office of the Prosecutor toward empowering the participation of victims and witnesses in investigative processes. This is not only related to the OTP link, but also to the support to witnesses regarding security, medical and psychological assistance tailored to their needs in relation to specific crimes, such as those in the detention facilities. We further stress that new and emerging technologies, as well as methods to trace the proceeds of crimes, to support investigations, and the establishment of evidence on core international crimes, coupled with the necessary safeguards to the integrity of the judicial proceedings, would effectively enhance, as the report rightly underlines, the investigations. My final point, Mr. President, relates to the increased cooperation of the Office of the Prosecutor with the Libyan authorities and the offices of the President of the Presidential Council of Libya and of the Prime Minister, in particular following Libya's acceptance of the Court's jurisdiction pursuant to the declaration of Article 12.3 of the Rome Statute. At the same time, we urge the Libyan authorities to proceed with the execution of arrest warrants for suspects residing in Libya, which remains, as the report underscores, unsatisfactory, since cooperation with the Attorney General remains significantly below the level required under Security Council Resolution 1970. To conclude, Mr. President, we note with regret that the Deputy Prosecutor was not able to brief the Council in person today, and we fear that this might impact negatively on the victims of atrocities and consequently on criminal accountability in relation to serious international crimes. In this respect, we underscore our undertaking to uphold and defend the Rome Statute, maintaining its integrity against threats and actions aimed at the Court or its officials. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Greece for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of China. I have listened attentively to the briefing delivered by Deputy Prosecutor Nazat Khan. I welcome the presence of the permanent representative of Libya at today's meeting. Since the Security Council referred the situation in Libya to the ICC pursuant to Resolution 1970, the Court has been conducting investigations into relevant cases. Currently, the situation in Libya remains complex and fragile, and the Court's related work continues to attract international attention. I wish to make the following 3 points. First, the Court should always carry out its work in an objective and impartial manner. China takes note of the Court's recent work regarding evidence collection, investigation, and judicial proceedings, and calls upon the Court to continue fulfilling its mandate in strict accordance with facts and the law, and ensure that relevant procedures align with the fundamental principles of international criminal justice. Objectivity and consistency are important bases from which the credibility of the Court and the international criminal justice derives. We hope that the Court will heed the legitimate concerns of all sides, take concrete actions to elevate international trust in its work, and effectively guard against selective application and double standards. Second, the Court should fully respect the judicial sovereignty of states concerned. The principle of complementarity established by the Rome Statute is a cornerstone of the international criminal justice system, and the primacy of national jurisdiction must be fully respected by all. In recent years, Libya has been working to restore its judicial system and advance relevant proceedings. These efforts deserve full recognition by the international community. The court must continue to respect Libya's judicial sovereignty, strengthen communication and coordination with the Libyan authorities, properly handle the relationship between international and domestic justice, and garner greater understanding and support from the Libyan people. Third, all parties should create favorable conditions for peace and stability in Libya. In light of the current political impasse in Libya, the international community should collectively engage relevant Libyan parties, encouraging them to address their differences through dialogue and consultation, participate in UN-led mediation in good faith, and build consensus on holding national elections and unifying institutions. Any work undertaken by the court should serve to strengthen intra-Libyan unity instead of amplifying divisions and tensions. The international community should continue to support Libya in building up its judicial and other capacities and improving its governance. States from outside the region should refrain from undue interference that could inflict fresh shocks upon Libya's peace and stability. Colleagues, for the Libyan people who have endured years of turmoil, peace, stability, and development cannot come soon enough. At this critical juncture, the Council should work with greater unity, forge consensus, uphold the Libyan-led and Libyan-owned principle, and provide Libya with more constructive support. China will work with all parties to firmly support Libya's efforts to safeguard its sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. China stands committed to playing a constructive role for the early realization of national unity and lasting peace in Libya. I resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to the representative of Libya.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank you for convening this meeting. We welcome Ms. Nazat Khan. We took note of her 31st report. I have been tasked to convey to you, Ms. Khan, and your team, the thanks and appreciation of the Prime Minister of the Government of National Unity, Mr. Abdulhamid Dbeibeh, for your efforts. Allow me to quote him. I reaffirm the commitment of the Cabinet to cooperating closely with the ICC pursuant to Article 12, Paragraph 3, expanding the Court's investigative powers and extending the mandate until the end of 2027. This has had a tangible impact on strengthening human rights throughout the entire Libyan territory without exception, such that anyone who would consider violating the rights of the vulnerable and any criminal who enjoyed impunity in the past and who is unwilling to follow the law would think many times before overstepping the bounds of their humanity and the humanity of their victims. The Cabinet is working diligently to dismantle armed groups operating outside state authority, ensuring that they do not escape accountability. We are enhancing the performance of state institutions that respect the dignity of citizens and that adhere to the law and the principle of accountability. We condemn all crimes of killing, torture, and enforced disappearance committed over the past years, and we will spare no effort to hold their perpetrators accountable in order to guarantee a better and safer future for our children and future generations. End of quote. Ladies and gentlemen, as cooperation between the court and the Libyan authorities is expanding to promote human rights and combat impunity, we stress the importance of prosecuting perpetrators of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide, based on the principle of judicial complementarity and burden sharing with the national judiciary, to strengthen the rule of law and human rights, and to end impunity in partnership with Libyan institutions. We stress once again that extending cooperation until the end of 2027 strengthens the court's jurisdiction based on the fundamental principle, the principle of complementarity rather than substitution. The Libyan National Judiciary is the mandate holder. Judicial complementarity can be invoked. The role of the court remains through cooperation and the exchange of evidence when national proceedings or the prosecution of suspects are not feasible. Within our commitment to the declaration based on Article 12, paragraph 3, my delegation stresses that any unlawful acts or practices that may be committed by state employees are individual actions that do not represent state policy or the policy of state institutions and do not reflect official instructions. Responsibility for such acts remains an individual personal responsibility borne by the perpetrator. The commission of such acts does not entail any obligation on the state to pay compensation arising from those acts. Ladies and gentlemen, in this context, it is important to commend the efforts of the Office of the Attorney General in Libya, especially in the case of the mass graves in Tarhuna. The office has investigated hundreds of cases and issued arrest warrants against suspects. We call on the court to exert pressure on states to apprehend suspects who are outside of the country, particularly member states that are signatories to the Rome Statute, in order to arrest suspects and surrender them without any delay. This file represents one of the worst atrocities committed in my country. Unfortunately, this issue was only mentioned by 3 members of the Council today. I would also like to address Libya's efforts in combating human trafficking and migrant smuggling. Numerous cases were filed. Suspects of various nationalities were apprehended. The government has also launched a national and international initiative in 2024 with the participation of UN organizations and international organizations to address this phenomenon and strengthen cooperation. We stress once again that any violations by individuals do not represent state policy. We reject impunity and we support building a state of institutions where the rule of law prevails. We also stress that crimes are imprescriptible. The national judiciary has a valuable history and enjoys the support and confidence of the Libyan people despite significant challenges and difficulties. We call for strengthening the principle of complementarity and channels of communication through accredited diplomatic channels. We take this opportunity to draw the Council's attention to the growing activity of transnational organized crime networks and human trafficking networks, as indicated in the latest report. In addition, the report of the panel of experts issued last month drew attention to the worsening phenomenon of oil smuggling. These activities systematically deplete the capabilities of the Libyan people and erode their sovereign wealth. Proceeds from oil smuggling contribute to the financing of destabilizing activities. In this context, we request the Council to take into account the technical and procedural observations submitted by the National Oil Corporation on the report, particularly with regard to the methodology of data verification, mechanisms of attributing responsibility, and the accuracy of some conclusions and information related to the export movements and operational processes. We call upon the Council once again to support efforts to impose sanctions on the real perpetrators and dismantle criminal networks and move from the stage of monitoring and documentation to practical measures based on precise verification of facts and evidence. The aim is to ensure that all those proven to have been involved in crimes are held accountable and do not escape punishment through the tools and mechanisms available to the Council. Ladies and gentlemen, very briefly, the Libyan people today is aspiring to achieving justice and building a state of institutions where the rule of law prevails. If you can, please extend the helping hand. If you cannot, do not be a burden on the Libyan people. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Libya for the statement. I now give the floor to Deputy Prosecutor Khan to respond to the views expressed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Excellencies. I do want to take this opportunity to thank all states who have contributed to this constructive discussion about our work in Libya and in relation to the mandate we have from this Council. I want to also thank the permanent representative of Libya for his very constructive input into these discussions, and I look forward to a continuing engagement with both him and the authorities to ensure that our partnership strengthens further in order that we can see real impact on the ground. Mr. President, I do get the sense in this last reporting period that all partners who work with us have accepted the fact that as a result of this sustained dialogue and work together, that there is real impact of the work of the International Criminal Court on the ground in Libya. We have heard this from victims, from witnesses, from civil society organizations, from members of the Libyan Authority government itself. So it's very important, I think, to acknowledge that our work has led to impact on the ground. And of course, there can be no greater catalyst for stability and for accountability than the delivery of justice, carefully, objectively, lawfully delivered in accordance with international law. I want to lastly say that the cooperation that we have with the Libyan authorities, which has been strengthened, is a form of cooperation which includes work with judicial institutions within Libya. And again, we look forward to continuing that burden sharing, that complementarity work, which is so central to the success of the Rome Statute. I want to thank all states which have contributed to this conversation, and I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Deputy Prosecutor Khan for the response and clarifications that she has provided. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.